We're here today to talk about keeping your back healthy. Now, a lot of people think that what we're going to do in a class like this is probably just teach you how to lift. Well, here's the problem. I've done classes for years, and I'll be talking to an audience, and I'll ask for a show of hands. How many of you out here have no idea how to lift? None of the hands go up. People have been lifting for years. I've never had somebody come up to me and go, "Oh, good, the lifting guy's here. I've had stuff sitting on the floor for 20 years, have no idea how to pick it up." Here's the issue. It's not just about lifting. What you're going to find in this program, how you sit, how you stand, how you sleep, how you recreate, all of those things can contribute to an eventual back problem. Now, the other reason we're talking about this is it's a very common problem. Statistics show that about 80% of the population in their lifetime will probably experience some sort of disorder. But here's what I want to get across, is that when most people think about back problems, they think about doing one activity differently or the one activity that caused the problem. And what I'd like you to understand is that for most of us, it's a wearing out process. As our backs are being used with how we sit and stand and lift and whatever, we tend to go through some stages. The first one being fatigue, then discomfort, then pain, then if it continues, disability. And the issue is that we can stop that process anywhere along the line. And what you're going to find from really good back injury prevention is that it's doing the things that we're talking about at the level of fatigue that will have the greatest effect. I mean, think about this. If you held your eyes open for as long as you could, pretty soon your eyes would start to burn a little bit, right? There's only one thing you need to do to get that burning to go away, and that's blink. One quick blink and your eyes will feel better. That's how easy it is at the level of fatigue, and the same is true for taking care of your back. If you hold your eyes open really long and really let it get severe, all of a sudden probably one short blink won't do it, and it's the same thing with your back. The longer you let it go on, from fatigue to discomfort to pain to disability, the harder it is to keep that from becoming a longer-term problem. Now, a lot of you are probably familiar with some back disorders. You've experienced things from time to time. A lot of us have experienced muscle soreness or muscle spasms. Some people, when it gets a little bit more serious, maybe get a sharp shooting pain down in the legs or numbness and tingling. The bottom line is, at whatever level you are, a lot of the things that we are going to be talking about today are going to help. Now, to bring some of this home and make it make some more sense, what I'd like to do for just a minute is talk about how your spine is designed. Thanks. Make this quick. What you will notice when you look at the spine is that it has three natural curves, and they're there for three reasons. The first one is, anytime you take an object that can be straight, and your back can actually be straight, that's what it looks like when it's flattened out, that just by putting curves in it, what I'm actually doing is designing a spring. So whether you're sitting or standing or lifting or whatever, just the shape of your spine is going to absorb shock. The second thing is when you have the natural curves in your spine, each one of the discs in between the bones is in its ideal position to absorb its share of the shock. If I said to you, when you're done with your work today, go out to your cars or your trucks, take your shock absorbers off, and remount them sideways. You know shock absorbers don't work this way, they work this way. And then we watch how people lift and how people work, and what do? We spend a bunch of time with our shock absorbers mounted sideways, and the discs are not in their best position to absorb shock. The third reason that these natural curves are so important is that what happens when you have the three natural curves is that all of the structures that support your spine are in their strongest position. The discs are in a position where they can absorb shock. All the muscles that surround the front and surround the back, they're all in their most powerful position. It's what we actually call the power position. If I was going to make a muscle as big as I could, I'd do it right here in the middle. If I was going to hit something really hard, you see how my hand is lined up with my forearm? It's in the middle. If I was going to jump as high as I could, my legs are kind of in a mid position, and it's the same concept for the spine. So the reason to keep the three natural curves is because the muscles and all the structures that support the spine are in their strongest position, the discs are lined up where they can absorb the most shock, and the three natural curves provides the most shock just by its shape. Thanks. All right, the thing that we want to talk about is just to keep in mind now as we talk about identifying risk factors and how you can take care of your back, that the goal here is to just figure out ways to reduce the risk factors as you're going about your business. Now, let's talk about these risk factors very quickly. There's a handful of them. The first three that are probably the biggest ones are posture, force, and repetition or frequency. And I want you to understand that they're actually all related to each other. Let me give you an idea of that. When you go from good standing posture to a slumped sitting posture, it actually just about doubles the pressure on your low back. And let me tell you why. When I go from standing to sitting, what am I doing? I'm changing my posture. When I change my posture, my legs are now no longer underneath me. I'm sitting on the end of my spine, and what does that do? That change of posture actually increases the forces on my back. Not only that, now what if I sit all day long? I have a change in posture that's increasing the forces, and now from a repetition or a length of time on the task, I'm doing that all day long. So what we're trying to do is figure out how do we chip away at some of those risk factors. I'll give you another example. You know that if I'm holding an object right here, if I move that object out and away from my body, what have I done? I've changed the position or the posture. That's changing the forces and making it significantly heavier, and then I may have to do that all day long. So what we want to do is figure out ways to chip away and minimize some of those risk factors. There's a handful of other risk factors you might want to pay attention to. For example, slips and falls. We see a lot of back injuries happen as a result of that. People are a little bit stiff, or it's cold out and their body's not real loosened up, and what happens? All of a sudden they do a movement they're not ready for, and muscles get pulled. Whole body vibration. People who are in vehicles a lot during the day, and you've got a lot of this going on, this can be tough on the spine as well. Extreme temperatures. If it's really hot, you're losing a lot of body fluids, the body gets tired, and we start making bad choices. Or if it's really cold, people are stiff and the muscles are tight, and then we start to move and things get hurt. Impact is another one. What's impact? Impact is, let's say you're in a vehicle in a over-the-road truck driver, situation, and you get out of your cab and you're X number of feet off the ground and you jump off, and what happens when you land? A lot of that goes to the back, so we try to minimize impact. And the other is personal habits. How do you sit? How do you stand? How do you lift? How do you move? How do you sleep? All right, let's start talking about some prevention strategies. And keep in mind as I'm going through this that none of this is about doing everything right or wrong. It's all about doing things better or less demanding. We just want our backs to last longer. So let's start with sitting, something we're all familiar with. Most people think if you put a bend in your knees and sit down, you got sitting taken care of. The problem is it fatigues us, it can make our back and our neck uncomfortable, and we want to figure out some ways to minimize those demands. So there's just 3 things to think of. The first one is, if you have some control over your work environment, set up your work area so that it invites you into positions of power. You would like your head over your shoulders, your back in the 3 natural curves. Otherwise, when you sit down to do your work, it's inviting you into positions where you're actually weaker. So that's first. The second thing is, try to find more than one way to do the same sitting job. What does that mean? It just means if I've got a job that requires me to sit a lot, is there any piece of that job that I can do standing up? For people who work in an office, maybe some of their phone calls can be taken in standing. If it's people who are doing assembly, are there any parts of that where you can mix it up a little bit? The back likes that. And the third thing is, particularly if those first 2 don't work, is just make sure that you adjust and move frequently. Adjust position. Your body likes change. It likes variety. And if you can just make a simple shift or adjust your chair or change your posture a little bit, that goes a long way to make sitting less demanding on your back. All right, let's stand. Let's talk about standing. I talk to a lot of people who tell me that standing for prolonged periods of time is hard on their back. And the reason is it's because how they stand. Here's the problem. When a lot of people stand, they will stand with their legs in line with each other. There's a problem with that. That means there's no support in front of me and no support behind. The upper body is a load. It has weight associated with it. And when I start to bend forward, can you see how this is a load that is now out in front of my center of gravity? It means it's a lift. Or if I stand like this, my upper body is behind my center of gravity. It's again a lift. I want to remove the lift to take care of my back. How do I do that? The first thing is you stagger your stance. When I stagger my stance, what you'll see is if my upper body goes forward or my upper body goes backwards, all of that is taken on my legs. My back doesn't have to do the lift. So the first thing is you stagger your stance. Second thing, when you're standing for prolonged periods, it's very natural to want to just straighten your legs out completely. The problem with this is it relaxes the muscles in your legs, and now you're just resting on bones. There's no shock absorption. If I said, climb up on your desk, don't actually do this, but climb up on your desk, jump off, land with your legs completely straight. Your teeth are going to explode because there's no shock absorption. Just before you hit the ground, you know what you'd do. You'd put a slight bend in your knees, and that would take some of that shock. So staggered stance, slight bend in the knees. The third one, when you have the opportunity and you're standing, get a foot up. You see people do this in bars all the time. Why? It takes some of the pressure off the back. It rolls the hips back a little bit. It puts the back in its natural alignment. It's a great position for standing. You'll see people, when there's no place to put their foot, they'll stand on their own foot, or they'll do the stork stance to try to get the back into its more powerful position. So when you are standing, staggered stance, slight bend in the knees, get a foot up when you can, and then the last one is just add movement. Just being able to shift position frequently, just like with sitting, changes the job description for your body and reduces the amount of fatigue that you're going to experience. All right. The other thing you need to keep in mind is that whether you're sitting or standing or whatever, that there are many instances where you're going to be working in awkward postures, and you just need to recognize that. If you see the arms out away from the body or the back flattened out, those things increase the demands. And what you want to make sure that you do is, at a minimum, change positions frequently. If, at best, figure out ways to create an environment that allows you to work outside of those awkward postures and more in positions of strength. All right, we've taken a look at sitting, taken a look at standing. Let's look at the big one now, the one most people associate with back problems, and that's some of the material handling. Material handling is not just lifting. It's also lowering, pushing, pulling, it's reaching. All of those things are included in this. And I'm going to give you some principles, not some specific techniques, but some principles that will take any material handling you do and make it less demanding on your body. The first principle is called keep it close and keep the curves. All that means, if I have a load and it's at arm's reach, it is 7 to 10 times heavier on my back than if I can keep it close. Not only that, the farther this object gets, what happens to the power position, the natural curves of my spine? It flattens them out. So we got a double whammy here. It's farther and heavier, and I've flattened out my back, and it's weaker. What I want is it's closer and lighter, and I'm in the natural curves, and I'm stronger. So whatever you are doing material handling-wise, you keep it close, you keep the curves. Second principle, if I start to bend over like this to pick something up, what I'm actually doing is becoming a one-sided bridge. Imagine a bridge, a drawbridge, and it's coming down. If there's no place for it to connect on this other end, it's going to snap off right here. Well, how do a lot of people do material handling? They do it like a one-sided bridge. What you're needing to do is connect the bridge on the other side. That will take a lot of the pressure off the back. How do you do that? Watch a golfer getting a ball out of a hole. What do? As they start to bend forward, they put their hand on their putter, and what does that do? It connects the bridge on the other side. When people are brushing their teeth in the morning, toothpaste goes on the toothbrush, they start to bend forward. What do they do with the free hand? They build a bridge on the counter on the other side to take the pressure off the back. If you have to lift something with two hands, what do? You step 1 foot forward, and as you do that, what have I built under here? I've built a bridge. So we've got keep it close and keep the curves, build a bridge, and then the last principle, really effective, is just called feet first. If you watch professional athletes, where does their movement start? Baseball pitcher doesn't throw a ball starting up here, it starts down here. A bowler doesn't start their movement up here, it starts down here. A professional material handler does not start the movement up here, the movement starts here. And what you're going to see is that it eliminates reaching, it eliminates twisting, makes it much less demanding on your back. So we've got keep it close, keep the curves, build a bridge, and feet first. Now what you'll see here is that I'm talking about things you specifically can do. And things, very simple things, like if you're going to pick something up, just ask yourself, why am I lifting it? Can it be slid? Can it be pushed? Is there a different way to handle it? Those are great ways to eliminate a lot of the risks. All right, let's look at one other real great strategy for reducing some of the risks to your body. A lot of times you're not going to have direct influence over your environment. There's not going to be a lot of things you can change, but know this. What you can do is what I like to call blink. Meaning, when your eyes get tired, what do? You blink. If your back gets tired, what can you do? You can blink. If your shoulders are tired, what can you do? You can blink. Simple stretches and postural adjustments allow your body to recover from some of the work that you're doing and keep you from getting tired. You watch athletes all the time, and what are they doing? They're changing postures and changing positions and loosening up. Why? Because just making good choices for keeping their body fresh goes a long way for them being able to use their body effectively when they're playing their sport, or for you when you're doing a lot of material handling. All right. We've talked about sitting, standing, lifting. We talked about some other risk factors. Let me just touch on those very quickly. Talked about slip and falls. Biggest way to reduce that risk is just to know where it is you're going to be going and make sure that you've got a clear path, that there's no surprises in your way. We talked about extreme temperatures. If it's really, really hot, just make sure you're getting plenty of fluid. That will help reduce some of the fatigue that you experience. And if it's really, really cold, just make sure that you warm up a little bit and let your body know what's coming. This whole thing about the impact that we talked about, the easiest way to reduce the risk of that is don't jump. Most of these vehicles that are, several feet off the ground that people are getting out of, they probably have a handrail and they probably have steps, and they're there for a reason. And then as far as the personal habits are concerned, as much as possible, just try to use some of the good body mechanics that we talked about, whether you're at home, at work, whether you're out recreating, whatever it is that you might be doing. All right, we've thrown a lot of information at you pretty quickly, and I know it's hard to remember all this stuff, so let me summarize briefly. First of all, just keep in mind, none of this is about doing everything right. We've talked about better ways to sit, better ways to stand, better ways to do material handling, ways to try to create a safer environment. All of those things in small pieces are going to go a long way to keep your back healthy. But just to summarize, the first thing is to make sure that you try to create for yourself an environment that invites you to make safe choices. If that's having things at better heights, if that's making sure you've got a material handling device available, those kinds of things are going to go a long way. Second, when you need help, make sure you ask for it. When you need an assistive device, make sure you use it. The third thing is this whole idea about blinking. All that means is let your body know what's coming. If you haven't been moving around for a while, just a simple warm-up will help. And if you're in the middle of doing something and you're getting a little bit tired, do what athletes do. A simple change of posture, a simple stretch, kind of freshens the body up and allows it to, again, function at full capacity. And the last one is to try to use good body mechanics, not perfect body mechanics. Everybody's designed differently. Everybody's got different strengths and weaknesses and flexibilities. You're all working in different environments, but the bottom line is that if I get a little bit closer, if I keep a little bit more of bend in my legs, if I get a little bit more of the feet moving first, all of those things are going to go a long way to keeping your back healthy. When we talk about prevention, just keep in mind that what we are really trying to do is keep everybody from ever experiencing a back problem in the first place. Now, we realize that's difficult to do, and some of you may experience a back problem from time to time. Also keep in mind that prevention is about really using a lot of the stuff we talked about to keep a minor injury from turning into something that's more serious. When you're out there, keep it close, keep the curves, build a bridge. Use these techniques when you can, and you'll go a long way towards keeping a healthy back. Thanks for watching.